Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This is what if Gohan was sent to DxD. Before we start, remember to like and subscribe to help the channel. Also check the description for the creator of the fanfic.
Chapter 12. What would they do now? It was the only thing that went through the minds of Issei, Kiba and Kaneko as they looked in fear at the warrior surrounded by some kind of blue flames, ahead of them while Rias and Akeno remained silent, unable to form words in amazement and just concentrated on enjoying the view in front of them, and boy did they enjoy it. Gohan only remained stoic, waiting for them to react and continue the fight. However, he was a bit confused when he saw the reactions of those present, especially the girls. Had they never seen someone increase their power a little? Are you planning to attack? Gohan asked, a little annoyed that they didn't come out of his stupor when they saw him. Sighing heavily when he realized they didn't seem to have heard him, he decided to attack and teach them a lesson by letting his guard down for too long, especially in a fight. Kiba, who was the first to reorient his mind, could see how his enemy disappeared from his place. Cursing himself for being so careless, he tried to locate him without any success before gasping in pain from a strong blow to his stomach that left him breathless while fell to the ground. Kaneko came to suddenly seeing Kiba fall as she clutched her stomach in pain. Aware that her enemy was attacking, she looked in all directions with her eyes moving back and forth faster than it should be physically possible. Unfortunately for her, this was of no use as she couldn't find her senpai anywhere, until she could feel a presence behind her. Acting quickly, she spun around ready to strike at the intruder. However, she didn't have much luck when her eyes met the black-haired man's open palm and aimed directly at his surprised face. Ha! Gohan let out a loud scream followed by an intense blast of air that hit Kaneko's face. This caused the white-haired Nekomata to be thrown several yards away as she flew through the air for a few moments before falling abruptly on the rocky ground. Wasting no time, the Demi-Saiyan disappeared again only to appear in front of the stunned brunette who had seen how easily his sensei had handled his two fighting partners. Issei hesitated for a few moments, waiting for Gohan to hit him, but he didn't. Seeing this and regaining some lost confidence, he threw his fist with the sacred gear in it to land a devastating blow on the impassive black-haired face. Or that's it, what I expected. Gohan waited until the last moment before leaning in slightly and allowing the blow to whiz past his left ear. However, he didn't stop there as he grabbed Gohan's forearm with his bare hands before bringing his right foot in front of him. Those of the boy while he used his hands to pull the stunned brunette's arm and cause him to trip over the black-haired boy's foot. Taking advantage of the weight of his student, Gohan leaned his body further, allowing the Issei's body to roll over him with an involuntary somersault as he screamed in terror before falling hard to the ground. Issei didn't have the necessary time to moan in pain when the Demi-Saiyan landed on top of him with his right fist ready to hit his face squarely. Shit! The brown-haired man yelled in fright as he closed his eyes before hearing a loud crash of an object hitting another and waiting for the inevitable pain that would follow. But it never came. He opened his eyes only to see the Demi-Saiyan looking at him intensely. Gohan hadn't hit him, but the cracked ground that was next to his surprised face while the black-haired boy's fist was buried there. That was damn fences. Any carelessness could cost immediate defeat. The black-haired man scolded seriously, watching the brown-haired man swallow a bit of saliva with his gaze to the side and his buried fist. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment, he told her sternly before returning to his standing position without taking his eyes off him for a moment from the boy on the ground. Issei knew that Gohan was serious, especially with that way of addressing him by his given name without any honorific and with such a serious and powerful attitude when he was normally carefree and happy. This Gohan was very different from the one he knew. Rias came out of her stupor upon realizing the Demi-Saiyan's intentions. She realized that Gohan wanted to make the doubt and fear in Issei's heart disappear, that doubt and fear that had paralyzed him in several of his encounters with the fallen angels, those emotions that could very well cost him his life in a real fight. Akeno on the other hand could only watch, just watch because she was still a bit turned on by Gohan's alpha attitude. Her mind could simply create scenes involving her and Gohan, doing a lot of things together, and not specifically good. Without warning, Gohan jumped a few meters from his position when Kaneko's fist, who had recovered from the attack, smashed into the ground where she had been not a few moments ago, causing several pieces of rock to be thrown up by the force of the blow. Impact, practically scaring the shit out of the poor chestnut who contracted his feet, preventing them from being crushed. Wasting no time, Kiba contracted his sword, this time surrounded by a faint, almost invisible blue aura as he ran towards the black-haired man who entered a battle pose waiting for his opponent's arrival. Gohan noticed the slight increase in Blonde's power, however, he let that go and focused on the incoming metal blade. Using his left arm, he blocked the strike while holding the metal tip between his fingers. The Demi-Saiyan expected Kiba to try to kick him to make him release his weapon or at least retreat upon seeing his failed attack, however, he didn't expect the Blonde to drop the sword hilt as he leaned in and retracted his arms. Hands as if holding another sword but invisible. This confused Gohan, but he didn't show it on his serious and determined face. That was until he could feel another slight rise in Kiba before seeing how a sword appeared out of nowhere between his hands. Kiba wasted no time and brought his sword in a side slash at his opponent's torso. He knew he had to hurry or Gohan could dodge his attack like he had done several times before. However, Gohan didn't flinch when he saw the sword a few centimeters from connecting with his unprotected abdomen. Although the black-haired boy was surprised by the Blonde's strategy, he had already formed several ideas in his head to counter the attack. Gohan could simply take the incoming blow by raising his ki a bit to strengthen his body and the sword wouldn't do any damage, but he decided to play it safe knowing that confidence could be one's greatest downfall. And Gohan had seen many such cases. Faster than the Blonde or the others present expected, the Demi-Saiyan jumped over him in a 360 somersault and at the same time rotated his body on its own axis in the air. This allowed him not only to dodge the attack from Kiba but also got a glimpse of the back of the unprotected Blonde's neck. "Sorry Kiba-san, but this fight has to end," he thought as he used his left palm and hit the younger boy's neck with his fingertips before falling to the ground behind the paralyzed Blonde. Issei and Kaneko watched helplessly as their partner fell to the ground and in a clear sign of having lost consciousness as he remained with his eyes closed and with no sign of waking up anytime soon. Rias and Akeno's eyes went wide at the ease with which the black-haired man defeated the Blonde. Such agility and power could only be matched by high-class devils. Just how strong was Gohan exactly? "Akeno," Rias called out from her amazement at the lightning priestess next to her and looked at her curiously. "Go help them, I want to see how strong Gohan is," she continued without taking her eyes off the scene before her. "Don't hold back." It was serious and Akeno knew that she had to carry out her boss's order. Gohan didn't listen to her as his concentration went to the last two standing fighters. Kaneko seemed hesitant to attack when she saw Kiba's unconscious body, but she kept an eye out waiting for a surprise attack from Gohan. Issei, on the other hand, couldn't stop looking at the black-haired man in fear and even more so now seeing how easily he defeated Kiba. What could he do when neither Kiba nor Kaneko could land at least one blow on the Demi-Saiyan? "Use my power." The brown-haired man was startled at the sudden voice that was heard. Issei quickly turned around but he did not see the owner of this voice and he was sure that it did not belong to someone he knew. This voice was demanding and a little hoarse. "But what?" He began without understanding why he heard that voice. He remembered having heard it on different occasions, however, he never paid much attention to it and catalogued it as his own. "But now, if you want to have the power to beat that boy, then use me." There it was again. Issei wasn't delusional, or at least he hoped he wasn't. However, could he really beat Gohan? The brunette was lost in his world but Kaneko was not. She decided to attack Gohan knowing that if he started the attack, she could be surprised by his speed as had happened before. So without thinking twice, she buried her hands in the ground before lifting them up and taking with her a rock of considerable size. She threw it at the Demi-Saiyan who this time allowed the rock to get closer to him and not dodge it instead. The large rock wouldn't last long when Gohan's fist smashed into it causing it to explode into hundreds of pieces. However, Kaneko was no longer in her original position. Knowing the younger girl's whereabouts thanks to his ki, Gohan simply took a side step bringing his body into a sideways position and allowing the fist of Kaneko who had tried to hit him from behind to whiz past him. The girl didn't stop there as she launched another punch at Gohan's face, but Gohan cocked her head to the side to avoid the blow. Furious at this, she brought out a side kick in an attempt to hit his ribs. However, Gohan just jumped back slightly and effectively dodged the Nekomata's kick. Kaneko gave no mercy as she launched herself at the Demi-Saiyan again with kicks, punches. There were even moments in which she used her head to try to hit him, but all this was useless with Gohan dodging each blow perfectly without any type of fatigue contrary to his white-haired opponent. "Stop dodging and fight," Kaneko growled in another failed attempt, but she didn't stop and continued to assault her on the black-haired man. Gohan never left his serious gaze as he jumped back slightly, before stopping short as he stared straight into the girl's eyes with intensity making her hesitate a bit before recovering and launching her attack. Crack. That's right, his fist connected with the black-haired man's jaw and broke his bones a bit. But not his Gah! The white-haired girl screamed in agony as she withdrew her hand from Gohan's impassive face. She brought her hand close to his chest while using the other to hold her in pain. Rias's eyes widened. She had heard the bones being crushed and could only wince at the unfortunate man who had let Kaneko hit him. However, she did not expect this. Akeno, he said quickly, earning a serious nod from the violet-eyed girl who unfurled her devil wings and flew directly to the unpleasant scene. Rational not wanting to hit her. However, this was a fight and he would have to do it in a place if he wanted to win. But this wasn't necessary as she unfurled her devil wings before stepping out of the way as Gohan's fist whizzed past her. Making use of her wings, she fluttered them, managing to fly a considerable distance from her opponent on the ground. Using his speed, Gohan disappeared only to appear behind Akeno, who noticed the black-haired man behind her before raising his arms, causing another larger beam to be shot out of the sky and directly at the Demi-Saiyan. Gohan frowned a little at the incoming electric shock. This one was bigger than the ones he used at first. Masenko, he raised his arms to his front before extending them towards the sky and directly at the lightning falling at high speed. Ha! Without warning, a sphere of ki shot from between his hands towards the sky, stopping the Akeno's attack in the process as she turned around so she could see the sudden burst of power that came from Gohan. However, that didn't end there. Ha! She let out another powerful scream, causing the ki sphere to increase in size and completely break Akeno's attack, who had to cover herself from the sudden gust of air that hit her, making her almost fall to the ground. Rias and Kaneko watched in surprise as Gohan's technique broke Akeno's lightning all the way up until it was lost in the sky when it hit the barrier that the lightning priestess had created and practically made a huge hole in it. "You're going to have to try better than that," Gohan told him, looking at the surprised purple-eyed girl in front of him. Akeno had never felt so overwhelmed in her life. That attack could easily level an entire building, but the Demi-Saiyan had handled it as if it were a simple annoying breeze. She was so excited. Without warning, Gohan disappeared and brought the violet-eyed girl back to reality as well as the others present, who began to look for the black-haired boy. However, he appeared behind Akeno. But that will be another time. Akeno's eyes widened in surprise as she heard the Demi-Saiyan's voice from behind her, because this fight is over. It was all it took for her to close her eyes in anticipation from being knocked out like she had Kiba. However, that didn't happen. Gohan's eyes went wide at Issei's sudden burst of power. He hadn't paid much attention to the boy, but he had managed to multiply his power somehow. Ha! He heard a determined yell from the brunette next to him, causing him to cross his arms in front of his face as he turned to receive the inevitable impact. He hadn't expected this turn of events. Issei's fist, with the boosted gear in it and shining as red as blood itself, crashed against the black-haired guard, causing a tremendous shock wave and causing Akeno, who was very close to her, to be thrown a few meters in the distance. However, she spread her wings to control her flight and land next to Rias and Kaneko in shock. Gohan gritted his teeth a little at the sudden power behind Issei's punch. The Demi-Saiyan had no idea where this power came from, but it was making him move back as he slid across the floor little by little, and the speed kept increasing. "What is this?" the black-haired man thought in surprise as he grunted slightly and felt his student's ki fluctuate erratically with increases in exponential power. It's as if his power multiplies every second, he realized as he gritted his teeth when the power behind the blow increased with the threat of breaking his guard at any moment. But Gohan wouldn't give him the satisfaction of that. While this power took him by surprise, it wasn't something Goku's eldest son couldn't handle. Ha! With a battle cry, Gohan was able to push back the fist of the determined brunette, who couldn't help but look a little surprised by this. He thought he had his sensei, but apparently he was wrong. Rias, Kaneko and Akeno could only stare in amazement at the sudden display of power that was ejected from these two combatants, especially Issei, since they had never seen such power from the brown-eyed boy. The ground cracked under the power that was displayed and causing a slight tremor to shake the area, before Gohan ended all the environmental chaos with a last battle cry and made Issei's attack completely nullified. He pushed further Issei's arm before grabbing his boosted gear arm in one swift motion and stopping it firmly in midair. "Wow, Issei-san," the black-haired man began in surprise as he watched the brown-haired man blink in surprise while still holding his outstretched arm. "That power you displayed took me completely by surprise." He couldn't help but smile as his eyes met with a puzzled and Brown disoriented as he looked at him. "Tell me, how did you get such power?" I asked, curious as I let go of the confused boy's arm. Issei blinked in confusion for a few more moments before shaking his head to clear his mind and looking at the black-haired man smiling at him. Gohan-san, he said confused as he processed the Demi-Saiyan's words. I'm not really sure, I just remember feeling useless in. He clenched his fists as he remembered the motivation that led him to this point. I just wanted power to not be a hindrance to you, to Bucho. He muttered the last part but Goha heard it clearly. He did not hesitate to put a hand on the depressed boy's shoulder. Gohan understood his friend's helplessness. He knew what it felt like to feel helpless when remembering those moments in his life where his strength could not be compared to the enemy in turn. Frieza, Broly, Cooler, Cell, Bojack, Majin Buu and many more. This boy might be a pervert, but his determination was one of the greatest I had ever seen. You never were. He smiled at her when his gaze returned to his face, and I'll make sure you never are. He finished only to earn a grateful smile from the brunette in front of him. Very good master, Issei exclaimed with determination as he made a quick respectful bow. I promise not to disappoint you. The smile on his black-haired friend's face only brought a silly but grateful laugh from the brunette. Rias could only smile as she approached the two and listened to their talk thanks to her enhanced senses as a devil. The determination that Issei had shown was spectacular and filled her with pride, but the dexterity and power that Gohan displayed made her wonder what level he was after all. He had not only defeated his minions at the same time but had managed to defeat his queen in a high class no less, without any apparent effort. Akeno was surprised by Issei's sudden power. She never expected the boy to have such power. However, what Gohan had shown throughout the fight was somewhat surprising. She realized that the black-haired boy's power was at a level far superior to hers. What the hell, she had even managed to counter his most powerful attack like it was nothing. Kaneko didn't say anything, partly because she stayed in the same place holding her hand lightly in pain and amazement. Amazement at the display Issei displayed and especially Gohan's power. She had felt her senses go haywire when Gohan started to make that light attack against Akeno and then that sudden burst of power with Issei. It was a terrifying sensation, as if she were being suffocated, as if Gohan's power left her breathless. The fight is over, Rias commanded as she approached them with Akeno behind her who couldn't take her eyes off the Demi-Saiyan. It seems that you are the winner, Gohan, she said looking directly into his eyes. Black-haired Onyx who could only scratch the back of his head in embarrassment. Well, I guess I went a bit too far. He laughed awkwardly, earning a smile from her and a slight laugh from Akeno, but I'm curious. He continued, turning to see the brunette next to him. Tell me, Issei-san, where exactly did you get that power? I asked, bringing the attention of the girls to the brunette. Well, He hesitated for a few moments, but when he saw the president's look, he decided to answer her. What happened is that I heard this voice and he told them everything about the voice that he heard in his head, gaining nods of the three in understanding. Well, that's kind of peculiar, Rias confessed as she looked closely at Issei, making him a little nervous. What do you think this means, Bucho? Akeno asked, a bit curious, as well as the Demi-Saiyan next to her. I'm not sure, but I think I'll have to go with my brother to talk about it. Then her gaze traveled to the black-haired man listening. And I'd also like to talk to him about you, Gohan, of course, if you don't mind. I asked her because she didn't want to betray the trust he gave her. Gohan looked at her curiously for a few moments but shrugged. If Rias trusted her brother, then he could trust her in her judgment. After all, I swear allegiance to him. Of course, I trusted you. He smiled at her, earning a smile from her. By the way, where is Kaneko? He asked, looking for the white-haired girl before seeing her sitting in the same place as before and holding her sore hand. Without waiting for an answer, she quickly walked towards her before kneeling at her level, scaring the Nekomata a bit by her sudden closeness. What do you do? She asked, confused and with a slight blush when she took her hand in hers before separating it to look at the girl's wound. Calm down, Kaneko-san, I'll heal you. He smiled at her dazed look before returning his gaze to the injured hand. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I got carried away by the fight. I hope you forgive me, he said with some guilt in her voice as she covered her small hand with hers, earning a slight wince from the girl and a blush that grew more and more. Rias, Akeno approached them with Issei walking the unconscious Kiba to bring him to them. Despite the fact that the scene brought a bit of jealousy from the two girls, they were able to suppress such feeling when they saw a bluish aura that covered the Demi-Saiyan's hand. After some time of embarrassment from Kaneko and the intrigued looks from Akeno and Rias, Gohan stopped his actions by letting go of the white-haired girl's hand, who couldn't stop staring at his hand in shock. But how? She asked in puzzlement as she clenched and unclenched her fist, much to Rias and Akeno's surprise. I used my energy to speed up the healing of his wound. It's a technique that a friend used to use. He smiled wistfully as he remembered the little Namek who had become one of his friends a long time ago. It's not so perfect like his, but I'm able to heal minor injuries. This earned a couple of surprised looks from those present. Was Gohan perfect? Rias didn't think much of perfection, but the black-haired man seemed close to that. He was strong, intelligent, educated, tall, handsome, with unwavering determination, and now he could heal wounds. What else did he have in store for them? Akeno, on the contrary, was more than sure that this being was perfection walking, such a warrior with such an incredible body and a calm and shy attitude that at the same time could be so determined and superior. It was more than obvious that he was perfect. Especially the body. Kaneko could only look at him with her eyes shining so hypnotically. Her senpai was such an impressive creature with extremely incredible powers. Was this being her guardian, her savior? Gohan felt uncomfortable with all the looks he was receiving. This was embarrassing with all those looks on him, each one with different thoughts but at the same time so similar. It doesn't matter, let's go back to the club, Rias said as she cleared those thoughts from her mind, gaining a nod from those present who began to head in her direction, until the brunette called out to them. A help here please. Issei yelled at the four of them and made them turn to look at him, just to look at him, trying to bring Kiba towards them while carrying him on his back with some difficulty, visible because of his panting and the drops of sweat that were running down his forehead. Gohan laughed for his friend but decided to walk towards him before grabbing the unconscious blonde from his back to bring him to his own, much to the gasping brunette's thanks. I'll take it, Issei-san, he said as he settled Kiba on his back in a more comfortable position with his head resting on his shoulder while he held his legs so he wouldn't fall. Issei just smiled at his black-haired friend before walking towards the group with the Demi-Saiyan in tow. However, they heard a squeal of slight pain from Akeno, quickly bringing everyone's attention, especially the Demi-Saiyan who looked desperate for the girl's well-being. Akeno, Gohan yelled, scared, waiting to see her with a mortal wound, but still. What happened to you? Confusion washed over him as he saw her sitting on the ground as she clutched her ankle with a wince. The priestess of lightning glared piteously at the black-haired man with a gleam that annoyed Rias, knowing what her queen was up to. Gohan-kun, it seems I hurt my knee in the fight. She gave him a cute look despite the grimace she made while her eyes sparkled with suppressed emotion. Era, can you help me? He asked, earning a somewhat uncertain look from Gohan, but being the innocent boy that he was of hers, he moved closer to her before kneeling down to her level as he made sure the blonde on her back didn't fall. Here, let me heal you, the black-haired man instructed as he repeated the process as he did with Kaneko, only this time he put his hands on Akeno's knee. It was curious because he did not notice any sign of fracture or discomfort in the girl's knee. However, he decided not to pay attention to it because if she said that it hurt, then she could not deny his request. That's okay, Gohan asked the girl, who could only smile at him, somewhat disturbing in her opinion. Sure Gohan-kun, but I think it still hurts a bit. Right here, he replied before taking his hand and guiding it up his thigh, brushing the skin in the process. This earned Gohan not only an uncomfortable look but also a jealous look. From Rias. Akeno, we have to hurry, he growled slightly, much to the confusion of those present except for the girl on the ground, but she decided to stop playing games for now. Or maybe just a little. Era, it's alright Bucho, she glared at her friend, earning a scowl from her before turning to see the Demi-Saiyan unsure of complying with her request with a slight blush on her face. Gohan-kun, could you take me to the club? He said, much to Rias' annoyance and the Demi-Saiyan's confusion. I can't walk since it hurts a bit, so, wouldn't you mind taking me? He asked cutely as she extended her arms towards him. Gohan hesitated for a few moments when he noticed Rias' annoyed look and that of Issei, who was dying of envy. Kaneko looked at him, but she had returned to her usual stoic attitude. However, he decided not to pay more attention to it and took Akeno into his arms, allowing her to wrap her arm around his neck while her other hand rested on his chest, much to her embarrassment as she thought it would be a very good idea to trace his muscles over the white t-shirt. Gohan started as he held Akeno in bridal mode and made sure Kiba didn't fall off his back by leaning in a bit. Is that alright? He awkwardly asked with a blush present on his confused face. You have no idea, she purred as she leaned a little into his ear, causing him to shudder considerably. If they already stopped chatting, we could hurry up, Rias growled slightly in jealousy. Akeno was taking this too far and she couldn't take it anymore. If you want to play like this, then I'll play like that, she thought as she threw him a challenging look at Akeno, who was able to notice her and look back at her. Gohan and Issei both felt nervous as they watched the two girls shooting each other deadly glares. Gohan could even swear he saw a pair of bolts shoot out of their eyes and collide with each other momentarily. Of course, Gohan said, looking at the scene before him with bewilderment and a bit nervous before glancing at Kaneko and Issei next to him. Issei looked just as confused and Kaneko just shrugged before starting to walk towards the club with Issei in tow. Shrugging, the black-haired boy decided to break the tension as he walked to catch up with Kaneko and Issei. However, he couldn't break the tension as Rias and Akeno kept glancing at each other as they walked to the club with Gohan letting out a defeated sigh. This is getting weirder and weirder, he thought as he turned his gaze to the sky and away from the tension that was taking place. With Gohan, the Demi-Saiyan walked calmly towards Azazel's apartment. He had left class and after escaping from Akeno who wanted to follow him, he was able to take his course to meet with the adult and then go to that meeting that he told her. I hope nothing weird happens, he mumbled as he walked. He had never been to a meeting like this and he didn't know what to expect. However, Azazel asked him to come with him and watch out for a possible traitor. Speaking of Azazel, Gohan couldn't understand how Azazel seemed to always be one step ahead. Of course Azazel knew of his story since he had told it to him himself. However, the adult seemed to have extensive knowledge of his abilities. Gohan remembered those times when Azazel completely mocked his key senses. The black-haired boy was very curious how he did it, but he didn't pay much attention to it and thought it was due to his moments of distraction. However, now with what he had done to break his mental barriers, he couldn't let that go anymore. My defenses were always up, he thought to himself as he narrowed his eyes in doubt. I never let my mental barriers down, he was the one who broke them, he realized as he continued walking towards Azazel's apartment. The Demi-Saiyan was a bit uncertain what Azazel was hiding from him and whether he had made a good decision in helping the fallen angel. He was so deep in his thoughts that he never noticed his arrival at the apartment. In fact, he was walking past the big hotel without realizing it because he was still deep in his thoughts. However, hey, Gohan-kun, he heard the voice of the subject he had in mind before stopping after having come out of his thoughts. Where are you going? She turned to see him waving at him and smiling that disconcerting smile at him. The black-haired boy started confused as he looked at a smiling Azazel. Azazel-san, what's wrong? Said the Demi-Saiyan as he walked towards him, a bit confused by his sudden appearance. Azazel just smiled seeing him approach. It was obvious to him that the black-haired teenager had a lot on his mind. Maybe a little meditation could help him a bit. It's okay Gohan-kun, but are you ready for the meeting yet? He asked, earning a nod from the black-haired boy next to him. Okay, let's get going, he told him before the pair of his wings came out of his back, scaring Gohan a bit on the sudden screen. Azazel-san, don't you think they could see us? She told him in bewilderment before pointing to his 12 wings to further emphasize his point. Nonsense, the adult smiled at him, bringing a drop of sweat that ran down the Demi-Saiyan's neck. Humans are very clueless, they won't notice, was all he said before taking his feet off the ground with a strong flapping of its pairs of wings before taking flight to a specific location. Gohan watched his flight in bewilderment for a few moments before shrugging and imitating the adult's actions, just without the angel wings thing or whatever. The black-haired boy soon caught up with Azazel as he flew by his side, much to the amusement of the young adult. You know, Gohan-kun, Azazel started looking at the Demi-Saiyan confused what he wanted. I'd like to see how fast you are. There was a defiant tone in his voice but Gohan didn't pay much attention to it. What do you think? If we start with something light, how about we start with match 1 inch? Before the black-haired man could reply, Azazel shot out with a sonic stampede, momentarily stunning the Demi-Saiyan. Shaking his head quickly, he decided to play the adult game by taking off the same way he was. No one was faster than a Saiyan. This continued for a while, with Azazel speeding up further as the black-haired man caught up with him, before being hit by him again. Azazel knew that Gohan was faster, but he was having so much fun with this boy from another dimension. He seemed to want to overtake him, but when he was about to, he slowed down to keep up with him and opened his mouth as if he was ready to speak. However, Azazel wouldn't give him the chance by accelerating even more, making him frown at him. This definitely brought a laugh from the adult seeing his frustrated face. However, Azazel slowed down knowing that they were almost at the meeting place, and his conclusion was reinforced by spotting a mansion in the distance with a very elegant courtyard around it. There didn't seem to be any signs of life around it. Since there was only a vacant lot with a few trees in the area. This is the place, the Demi-Saiyan asked curiously as he stopped next to her, causing the adult to nod his head in response. Come on, they should already be waiting for us, Azazel told him before descending into the mansion with Gohan trailing behind him. They landed on the grass in the courtyard with Azazel, retracting their wings before starting to walk towards the gates of the great mansion. However, they opened on their own and made the black-haired man a bit surprised. Gohan quickly scanned the place with his key senses, only for his eyes to go wide. There were at least 20 people, all with high level, especially 3 of them. From what Gohan knew, they were almost as strong as Azazel. However, that was not what surprised him. Raynare, he murmured, surprised to feel her in the mansion along with the other energies. He never expected to find her again, especially here in this meeting. What are you doing here? He wondered in bewilderment without knowing the answer to this. She is accompanying Kokabiel, the smiling adult next to him told him before deciding to enter the door. He is one of Grigori's leaders, he added when he saw the confused face at the mention of the new subject. Gohan nodded to what Azazel told him. He remembered the little conversation they had about this organization of fallen angels that Azazel led along with other high-class fallen angels. Without wasting any more time, they entered the apparently empty mansion. There seemed to be nothing and no one, only the darkness could be seen by the Demi-Saiyan. That until about time, Azazel, a voice said to his left, grabbing the black-haired man, like a smiling Azazel, to turn to look at him. What took you so long? He asked as he walked towards them as he stepped out of the shadows to reveal a boy roughly the same age as the curious black-haired man. He was a tall boy of average height, about the same size as Gohan. His hair was a dark silver color with some bangs that fell over his calm face. His outfit consisted of a dull green undershirt with a loose black camisole over it. He also wore dark red pants being covered by a kind of jean half cut from his waist and dull gray casual shoes. Patience can be very beneficial, Vali-kun, the adult said smiling as he added the name of the silver-haired boy so that Gohan would know who he is. However, let me introduce you to a friend of mine. They are Gohan, he continued before pointing the curious black-haired man with his gaze on the new boy. Vali looked at the Demi-Saiyan analyzing this guy. He seemed strong with this muscular build. However, his curious and innocent look made him look very vulnerable, so he wasn't sure what to think about it. Gohan had already sized up the silver-haired boy. It was clear to him that he possessed great power, and his posture as well as his gaze could give credence to that statement, but there was something. Gohan could feel another energy in this boy. It was almost like what he felt when he met Issei. A pleasure, Vali-san, the black-haired greeted by extending his hand because he did not want to be rude to him. Same here, was the boy's simple response. However, he didn't take the Demi-Saiyan's hand before turning and walking towards a hidden door in the darkness of the mansion. You'd better hurry, Azazel, they are getting impatient, he said before disappearing behind the door. Azazel just smiled at Gohan, who looked at him puzzled by this boy's character. He motioned for him to follow as he walked towards the door, opening it on the possessed before walking in with Gohan behind him. The black-haired man had to squint his eyes a bit as he was hit by the light from this room, but when his eyes adjusted, he could see a group of people in a large room with armchairs and furniture elegantly arranged throughout the room. About time, one of the people commented, this being a tall guy as tall as Azazel, even taller. What took you so long? I asked with a frown at the subject, smiling at his annoyance. He was a rude middle-aged man with black hair and beard, also featured good musculature throughout his body. His outfit consisted of a black full-body spandex along with metal plates on his legs, all this in a brown cloak that covered most of his outfit with a metal plate over his shoulder. Come on, Barakiel, don't be mad, he said to the guy with a frown. After all, I'm already here, he smiled as he watched him snort at his comment. The rude guy just looked away while crossing his arms. Azazel could be a fool sometimes. I guess Shemhazai and Armaros couldn't come, Azazel pointed out as he looked around for these two of them. Armos said he had to do something urgent and Shemhazai has been very busy with being a father, Barakiel replied as he crossed his arms over his muscular chest. Azazel could only laugh a little as he remembered one of his best friends in his early fatherhood. It was funny how everyone he knew had wives and children, yet he never had one. Now that was a bit depressing. Gohan never paid attention to them. Instead he looked at the person in one of the corners of the room who seemed to be in a group of fallen angels with their wings exposed. It was Raynare and she was looking at him puzzled and surprised to see him. Raynare couldn't believe what she was seeing or who she was seeing. It was Gohan and apparently she knew Azazel, the leader of the Grigori and the strongest in the place. Many questions arose in the girl's mind when she looked at those onyx eyes. However, she had to look away when she felt how her cheeks warmed slightly when she remembered that confusing moment with him. What was happening to her? It's that guy, I heard Dani-Saiyan say before turning to see him looking at the Demi-Saiyan. It's that guy who defeated me and the person you warned us about, right? He told them before looking at Raynare, who could only nod hesitantly, earning a curious look from the male fallen angel. Is that the guy? Kalawana asked curiously as her eyes evaluated the black-haired boy's body. Well, at least he looks better than that guy. She licked her lips, leering at the Demi-Saiyan and earning a hard glare from Raynare. But no one noticed that. Who? Oni-sama wants to play with that boy for a while, Mattel pointed out mockingly as he smiled at the older fallen angel and earned a grunt in response. Raynare decided to move away from the conversation while her eyes traveled back to the black-haired man, only to see him looking at her. Hadn't he ever taken his eyes off her? This made her blush slightly, but she quickly composed herself by shaking her head. And clear those thoughts. Gohan wanted to talk to her, but he knew that this was not the time or the place to do it, especially when the meeting was about to start, so he kept his urge to himself and decided to wait a bit. By the way, the smile that settled on Azazel's face, Gohan did not like, knowing that the adult had something planned, especially when his eyes traveled to him. I present my new assistant, Son Gohan. This earned a nervous smile from the Demi-Saiyan as he felt all those stares on him. Vali, who was leaning against one of the corners of the room, paid no attention to him since Azazel had already introduced him. The group of Raynare and herself only limited themselves to looking at the black-haired man with curiosity as to what he would do or say, while the rest of the fallen angels in the room only limited themselves to looking at him for a few moments before returning their gaze to Azazel, who didn't stop smiling because of Gohan's nervousness. I wouldn't want to bother you, but, another guy started with a clear annoyed voice, can we start this meeting? He ended up looking directly at Azazel and Barakiel with disdain. Gohan immediately didn't like this guy, not because of his annoying attitude towards Azazel and the other rude-looking guy, who, oddly enough, had a resemblance to Akeno. No, he didn't like this guy for that reason, but for that such a despicable aura that he could perceive from him. Gohan knew that this guy was pure evil, and his conclusion could be reinforced with that evil appearance that he had. His red eyes only made him look more evil and ruthless than perhaps he was. That pale face accompanied by those pointy elf ears made him look very demonic, not to mention those pointy rotten teeth and that long and greasy black scalp that had fell on each side of their creepy faces. His full-length black tunic didn't reveal what the guy looked like underneath, but the black-haired man deduced that he didn't want to know. You're right, Kokabiel. The Demi-Saiyan could see Azazel smile, but Azazel's hard look told him that he didn't like this guy like him. We have to get going, he told them before walking towards a large door with some of the fallen angels followed him. It seemed that Raynare and her group, as well as Vali and another group of fallen angels that accompanied Barakiel and Kokabiel, stayed in the large room. Only Azazel, Barakiel and Kokabiel, as well as 3 other fallen angels in formal clothes and 2 others in armor. On top of them that the Demi-Saiyan assumed were advisors and guards respectively, followed them. They entered the other room, closing the door in the process. However, Gohan could see the look that Azazel gave him before the doors closed. He didn't need words to know what he wanted. Azazel wanted him to be attentive for any reason. Rare thing, and Gohan wouldn't let him down. The black-haired boy looked around, carefully looking at everyone present in search of any strange movement. His senses picked up a lot of negative energy from most of these people. However, it was not something to worry about, but that Kokabiel guy, that guy Mal, was definitely there. If there was someone who could be the traitor, it had to be him. What are you doing here? She heard someone next to her growl slightly before turning to see the owner of the voice, only to lock her gaze with that of an annoyed and insecure Raynare. Gohan sized her up for a few moments. It was obvious that the girl didn't like him being here. However, that annoyed look was a pathetic excuse to cover her insecure look that the black-haired boy could clearly see. I'm accompanying Azazel-san. He couldn't help but smile when he saw her hesitate for a few moments. But what are you doing here? This only earned a snarl from her as he bared a bit of his sharp teeth at her. That's none of your business, she snapped, gaining the attention of everyone present with some looking amused at the scene ahead of them. Gohan never noticed the gaze of those present and only focused on Raynare. He couldn't help but think how cute she looked, trying to cover her insecurity from him with that fierce look on her face. She was failing miserably at that. Look, I'm really sorry for what I did to you, Gohan started, letting go of his teasing towards the girl. But you have to understand, you almost killed my friend. He continued to see how the girl looked at him, puzzled. No, I'm sorry though. I let my emotions cloud my judgment. Do you forgive me? I asked sincerely, earning a dazed and puzzled look from the black-haired girl. There was that feeling again. She, Raynare, was beginning to feel vulnerable in front of this guy and his sweet words. What was this? And why did he leave her breathless while her heart pounded? Were some of the questions that passed through Raynare's mind as she looked at the hopeful face of the black-haired man. However, knowing that she was being overshadowed along with the Demi-Saiyan, she took his arm, surprising the black-haired boy before pulling him into the first dark room of the mansion and closing the door behind her for more privacy from the curious glances that received when leaving. "What are you up to?" she demanded without wasting time as she let go of the black-haired man's arm and grabbed the edges of his shirt to pull him closer to her. "I doubt your intentions are good. No one can be so kind and forgiving to the person who tried to kill one of her friends." She decided to stop playing games and suppress that stupid and confused feeling. This guy couldn't be as nice as he made him seem. Gohan blinked in confusion as he looked directly into the girl's violet eyes. Apparently she didn't believe his words, or at least was refusing to believe. "Raynare," the black-haired man began as he took the girl's wrists and slowly detached them from him. "I'm being honest about this. My father instilled in me that anyone, no matter how bad they are, can have a second chance," he told her while he looked directly into her violet eyes, which seemed to shine with an emotion unknown to him. What was it? Longing? Hope? Raynare couldn't let a warm sensation invade her from within. It was nice and comforting while she looked at those two captivating onyx orbs. Why did he care about her? Was what she wondered when she felt how her body trembled involuntarily. No. She mentally scolded herself as she moved away from the Demi-Saiyan before looking away with insecurity now more visible than ever on her confused face as she wrapped her arms protectively at her sides. "What's happening to me? I cannot be silent for this guy," he realized when he finally understood why his heart was beating so hard around him. Gohan looked at her hesitation while her face was away from his. She seemed so vulnerable and fragile, very different from the Raynare he knew. It was a bit disconcerting and it broke his heart to see her in this state, so the black-haired man didn't hesitate, walking towards her before encircling him in a comforting hug like that day. However, now it was more private, with zero prying eyes and being partially hidden by the darkness of the room. Raynare immediately shuddered when she felt Gohan's warm embrace. It was like that time, so warm and protective, as if he would protect her from anything, from her fears, from her doubts, from everything. What should she do? "Please, Raynare." The Demi-Saiyan broke the silence by squeezing her a little more in his arms. "Don't let this second chance pass you by. I don't want to see you get hurt." She was in an internal conflict about to give in to the black-haired man's words, and Gohan knew it. It was all or nothing. This time she didn't push him, but instead, she buried her face in the chest of the black-haired man, who didn't hesitate to allow her such access and caress her back gently while listening to her sob lightly. Why are you doing this to me?" Her voice was heard sobbing between her chest. I've been loyal to my plans, following each step to the letter. But you arrive and ask me to stop all that behind." He continued, taking a very heavy breath and looking up at the Demi-Saiyan's face. "Why?" Gohan felt a lump in her throat seeing that look on her face. Her violet eyes were so bright because of those tears that did not stop coming down her face. Her bangs on her forehead were stuck a little to her slightly sweaty face from crying. It was so painful to see her like this, and all because of him. He couldn't finish when out of nowhere something exploded. Boom. It was a loud explosion that forced him to cling to a commissioned Raynare. He immediately raised his avoiding ki as the wall to the side exploded, along with various pieces of the mansion falling on top of them. Gohan immediately did a scan, cursing himself for hanging out with Raynare for too long and forgetting the main reason he came. Azazel and Barakiel and Kokabiel were fine, as well as Vali and the 3 fallen angels from Raynare's group. There were 4 other fallen angels that accompanied Barakiel and Kokabiel who were also in good condition. However, the black-haired man was able to detect 7 energies disappear, with last 2 slowly descending until they were extinguished. Damn it. They heard above them only to see Kokabiel in the air with 5 pairs of wings on his sword as he flapped them a bit to stay suspended in the air. I was so close. He growled furiously as he clenched his fists while his eyes looked at 2 fallen angels on the ground, who remained calm while looking at him seriously. So this was your plan after all, Kokabiel? Barakiel said as he crossed his arms on his chest and at the same time casting a hard look at the fallen angel in the sky. You wanted to kill us with that magic bomb and take control of Grigori, but your plan failed, Azazel continued, only this time his smile was missing. However, your plan killed 3 of our best advisors and cost him his life. Life to 2 fallen guardian angels. The serious face that settled on Azazel made the black-haired man surprised, since he had never seen such a serious and furious adult. Without prior warning, Azazel spread his 12 wings, followed by a slight crater that arose when he took off towards Kokabiel, who did not expect this and caused the fist of the Grigori leader to crash into his stomach, sending him directly to the ground and causing a huge crater with debris that they were flying everywhere. Gohan deflected the rubble of the destroyed mansion as well as the falling rock debris from the ground towards him, as well as Raynare at his side. Vali only dodged the falling debris without any apparent effort, while the other fallen angels used their light powers to smash or deflect the debris. Damn, Kokabiel growled as he exited the crater and took off again into the sky. How dare you! He yelled furiously as he looked at Azazel with daggers, who just looked at him. That collision caused his cloak to be slightly torn in some places. At the corner of his mouth there was a trickle of blood that fell down to his chin. He also carried small minor injuries all over his body along with the dirt from being crashed into the earth. It started. Raynare muttered under her breath, but the Demi-Saiyan next to her could hear her clearly. What started it, Raynare? The black-haired man asked, puzzled, only for her to look at him doubtfully for a few moments before giving in. Kokabiel-sama planned all this. He wanted to finish off Azazel-sama and Barakiel-sama and the other great leaders to take control of Grigori, he said with his eyes on the ground when he heard Gohan growling at what he said. He thinks that Azazel-sama is holding back the fallen angels and plans to start another war of the three factions. Gohan had heard about this war from Rias and Azazel himself, and it wasn't a pretty thing to hear. A war, no matter how big or small, could cause the loss of many lives, whether innocent or not to mention the pain it would bring over time. No, he couldn't allow that. I'm going to stop him, the black-haired man said firmly, making the eyes of the girl next to him widen. No, you can't go, he's stronger than you. Could you? She exclaimed with concern, bringing Danasik, Kalawana, Matelt and Vali's attention to it, before her cry dropped to a whisper without daring to say the last word. Die. The Demi-Saiyan finished for her, receiving a nod from her. Don't worry, that guy can't hurt me, I assured her with a sun-style smile, causing a slight blush to settle on her eyes. Cheeks. Before Raynare could form words, the black-haired man disappeared, surprising not only her but also those who were looking at them earlier, especially Vali, who quickly turned his gaze to Azazel only to see Gohan appear next to him. Do you want to join the battle, Gohan-kun? It wasn't a question but a conclusion when seeing the determined face of the Demi-Saiyan towards the fallen angel in the sky. What are you doing, boy? You better not interfere, Barakiel told him as he approached Azazel and the black-haired man, who paid no attention to the guy with a slight resemblance to Akeno. Azazel only smiled at the words of his friend from a long time ago. He had no idea what this boy was capable of. How he would enjoy this. What do you want, damn lowlife? Kokabiel began furiously when he was interrupted by this stupid boy. Do you want to die? He growled furiously, bringing a reddish glow to his eyes, giving him the impression that they were redder than normal. No, Gohan said very calmly and calmly, making several of those present sweat. I'm here to kill you. He was firm and powerful, managing to make Kokabiel hesitate for a moment. However, he quickly recovered and gave him a scathing look. The insolent black-haired. You kill me. He laughed softly but with a furious face. You are a very stupid low-life being. He ended by creating a spear of light between his right hand. Raynare began to feel very worried about Gohan's well-being. Worried? Since when did she feel worried about someone other than her? Right, since she met son Gohan. I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Don't waste it, Kokabiel, he told him, provoking the curious looks of those present except those of Azazel and Raynare, who already knew the black-haired man's morals. Kokabiel felt insulted. No, he didn't feel insulted, he felt degraded by this pathetic life that dared to challenge him, Kokabiel, the most powerful fallen angel and future ruler of Grigori. Like this boy dared to do that. Wasting no more time, he threw the spear of light at the impudent boy, only to have his eyes widen in surprise when the black-haired man hit his light attack with one of his hands, as if it were just trash. I guess I'll take that as a no. Without warning, the black-haired man disappeared before reappearing above a bewildered Kokabiel who couldn't follow Gohan's movements. With a devastating blow to the back, Gohan sent Kokabiel flying back to the ground, causing him to crash, creating another crater and debris flying everywhere. With a furious yell, Kokabiel took off at Reaper speed towards the Demi-Saiyan. However, the black-haired man only had to dodge the blow by stepping aside and letting the fallen angel's entire body whiz past him. However, Gohan would show no mercy, taking her ankle in his hands when it came into view and then rapidly spinning it like a yo-yo. Kokabiel yelled in pain as Gohan threw him straight into one of the mansion walls that had been left intact from the explosion. This caused the wall to collapse into 1,000 pieces while the fallen angel's body crashed past her before falling to the hard ground and slipping on the dirt in the process. Raynare, along with Donasek, Kalawana, Matelt and several other fallen angels, could not believe what his eyes saw. A simple teenager was mopping the floor with Kokabiel, one of the leaders, or after seeing this, former leaders of Grigori. It was simply unheard of. Vali was surprised but not to the degree of the others. However, a smile settled on his face as he watched the black-haired boy mistreat the fallen angel who tried to hit him again, only to miss again. It's Gohan, huh, he thought to himself, evaluating this guy's movements. Maybe you're not as weak as I thought at first, he finished with a defiant smile that Azazel could see in the distance. Barakiel started bringing Azazel's attention to him. Where did you get this boy, Azazel? The Thunder Master asked curiously without taking his eyes off the fight ahead of him. Impressive, isn't it? Azazel said as he looked at Kokabiel, being thrown back to the ground. Let's say it fell from the sky, he said with a mysterious smile, making his old friend frown. A fallen angel? Barakiel asked uncertainly, turning his gaze to the other adult next to him. Something like that. He couldn't help but smile at his friend's annoyed look. By the way, Barakiel, your daughter seems to have a liking for my new assistant. Without warning, Barakiel's normally closed eyes widened, almost widening in the process, and Azazel could have sworn he saw her brown orbs momentarily. I have enough of this. Kokabiel yelled furiously as he took flight high up and away from the impassive Demi-Saiyan. I'll send you to the other world, you low-life miserable, he said as he raised his hands to the sky as he created a large spear of light above him. Gohan narrowed his eyes a bit at the size and power of the spear. It was as big as the mansion was and as powerful as Akeno's 20 lightning bolts. Horror crossed the faces of the fallen angels, except for Azazel, Vali, Gohan, Kokabiel and Barakiel, who was still in shock from the news they gave him. Raynare and the others began to try to find a way to get out of the place before Kokabiel launched that attack that would undoubtedly destroy much of the area and them in the process. However, Raynare could not let this feeling of concern for the Demi-Saiyan to disappear. Die damn and all, you miserable life down! I screamed, totally crazy from being completely humiliated. Lowering his arms and aiming down at him and directly at the black-haired man, he made the huge spear of light descend at considerable speed to the ground, scaring many of those present. Azazel remained calm and smiling at the sight of the spear before turning his head to the Demi-Saiyan on the ground and waiting for the attack. Let's see what you do with this, Gohan-kun, he thought with amusement and attentive to what the black-haired man would do. Vali did nothing and instead leaned against a small piece of wall as he waited for what this boy would do with this fallen angel attack. He just hoped it would be something interesting. Barakiel cleared his shock and looked directly at the back of the calm black-haired man. He didn't even pay attention to Kokabiel's attack. He only focused on this boy who, according to Azazel, his daughter Akeno, had a great interest in him, who not to do anything wrong with his precious Akeno. Me. He began with a loud voice, making everyone stop what they were doing except for Kokabiel, who just kept laughing like crazy in the sky. Me. Without warning and to everyone's surprise, the black-haired boy leaned in slightly as he retracted his clasped hands to his sides with a bluish flash appearing between his cupped hands. The light seemed to radiate pure heat, as if the sun itself was being contained in the teenager's hands. However, that power that this little sphere emanated was incredible. It easily tripled Kokabiel's attack. Die everyone. Kokabiel was crazy and his look only demonstrated that statement while the spear almost reached the ground, that until he unleashed the full power of the Kamehameha on the incoming spear of light, only to make it disappear as it was completely consumed and continue on its course towards a startled, scared and furious Kokabiel. No! He yelled in terror as the Kamehameha hit him. However, he tried to get out of the way of the attack by flapping his 10 wings for increased speed, only to have no such luck when his right shoulder along with a pair of wings to his right were hit by the Demi-Saiyan's attack, causing him to scream in pain. The smile on Azazel's face reflected how impressed he was as he looked at that beam of energy that had escaped from the black-haired boy's hands and was lost far away in the sky. Without a doubt that attack was very powerful, and Azazel deduced that Gohan could have put more power into the attack, only held back. Vali raised an eyebrow in surprise at the hard and pure power that came out of Gohan's hands. He realized that this boy somehow handled pure energy and not light like the angels and the fallen angels did. The stunned looks of the others showed how impressed they were. Even there was one that was afraid of such destructive power. Raynare was undoubtedly the most impressed. She had never known that Gohan was so powerful, such power to defeat Kokabiel without any apparent effort. It was amazing. It was incredible, it was so amazing, and she had fought with the Kokabiel, who had been forgotten by all but the Demi-Saiyan, fell to the ground on his knees while clutching his shoulder tightly, bleeding. Most of his wings on his right side had disappeared. He only had 2 left and the 5 on his other side, with those 2 only, bleeding a little and in bad shape. How is this possible? He wondered in shock and pain as he clutched his injured shoulder and watched the beads of sweat fall from his face to the barren ground below him. How is it possible for a mere lowlife did this to me? He growled loudly, hitting his fist against the ground and making it bury a little in the dirt. I'll repeat it one more time, Gohan said calmly, drawing attention to him. Give up and leave your ambitions behind. He ended up surprising several of those present to a great extent. Kokabiel only limited himself to growling furiously. This boy humiliated him, defeated him, and now he was showing him mercy. Well, he didn't need mercy from anyone, especially from him. Using every ounce of his strength, he created a spear of light not as large as the last one and not as small as the first one before launching it at the black-haired man, sighing in defeat. He simply raised his arm and fired a blast of energy that exploded upon contact with the spear, nullifying Kokabiel's attack. However, Gohan could see how a portal opened next to the fallen angel and now smiling at him. You've defeated me, Chico. I have no choice but to admit it, she said with a smile but with an annoyed twinkle in her 2 red eyes. But this won't be the last time you'll hear from me, she continued furiously before looking at Azazel and Barakiel. You won't either, he snarled at them before walking towards the portal with clumsy steps as he got up. Gohan was about to go after him, but Azazel stopped him while shaking his head that he would let him go. Gohan reluctantly complied, but relieved that he didn't have to kill the fallen angel, although an imprisonment might have sounded a lot better. Come on, Raynare, you've been very distracted lately, Danaseek called suspiciously as he unfurled his wings and headed towards Kokabiel and the porter at his side. Raynare remained quiet for a moment, processing what had happened, but now it was all over and they had to regroup. Only she didn't want to go back to Kokabiel. She felt that being here with Gohan would divert. However, what would happen to her own plans? Not to mention that Grigori would forgive her. Gohan did, but that didn't mean they would, especially Barakiel and Armaros, who were known to be very harsh in these matters. Forgive me, Gohan, she thought sadly when her eyes traveled to the black-haired man's back. As much as I want to accept your proposal, I won't be able to. Not with everything I've done, and what I've done to you. She quickly unfolded her wings, averting her gaze as she passed by the black-haired man, who looked at her with confusion written all over his face. Raynare, why? The Demi-Saiyan thought dejectedly, watching how the black-haired girl looked away from him as she entered through the portal, being followed by the other fallen angels who were following Kokabiel. Immediately after the last fallen angel crossed through the portal, it closed completely, leaving behind a calm and disconcerting silence. Suddenly, Gohan felt a hand on his shoulder pulling him around to see Azazel smiling sympathetically at him. It was obvious that the adult knew what was going through his mind. You'll see her again, I assure you, he whispered, only for him to hear and receive a grateful nod from the black-haired man. After that, Azazel walked away from the Demi-Saiyan to speak to Von Barakiel about Kokabiel's betrayal and his soon-to-be dismissal from the Grigori leaders, leaving the black-haired man alone and to his own thoughts. Why didn't I accept my proposal? She seemed like she wanted to do it. But why? Why didn't she? The Demi-Saiyan thought, frustrated and somewhat depressed, clenching his fists a bit, remembering that look on Raynare's face. She really could change. His heart and his mind told him yes, but the facts pointed in the opposite direction. He gave her several opportunities, but she did not take the right path. Gohan knew that change was not easy. Proof of this was Vegeta and Piccolo. However, Raynare was not them. What am I supposed to do? He thought, frustrated and sad as he looked at the ground with thoughts of that girl with black hair and cute eyes. There, Gohan, he heard a voice before turning to face the owner, right? It was Barakiel, and he didn't sound happy at all. Hey, is that right, sir? Gohan began doubtfully, not knowing his name since he never paid attention to Azazel's conversation with the subject. Barakiel, he said with disdain as he seriously looked at the boy almost as tall as him. Akeno's father. This was definitely not expected. This guy was Akeno's father. Who? Nice to meet Akeno-san's father. The black-haired boy respectfully bowed, earning a frown from the older guy. She's my classmate. She's a very nice girl, he said while smiling at her, remembering Akeno-san's father. The violet-eyed girl. Barakiel immediately launched himself at him, taking him by the neck, much to his surprise as well as that of some in the place. "Don't play dumb with me." It was loud and Gohan had to believe it. "Akeno is a beautiful girl and I'm sure she caught your eye, so I'm warning you, if you try anything with her, I swear that He couldn't finish when Azazel appeared at his side before taking Barakiel's hand so that he left a bewildered Demi-Saiyan on the ground. Now Barakiel," Azazel smirked at the angry adult next to him, "I'm sure Gohan-kun won't do such an indecent thing, right?" Gohan nodded to Azazel's affirmation with a bead of sweat running down his neck as he saw the hard glare the tough-looking guy gave him. "I'll be watching you," was all he said as he turned and walked away from the two of them. Azazel could only smile at the Demi-Saiyan with that smile that apparently never left his face. Gohan wondered if his jaw didn't hurt because of that. However, he never made his doubt known out of fear of this strange guy like it was Azazel. "Gohan-kun, thanks for your help with Kokabiel, I'll take care of it from now on," he said as he held out his hand to pick him up, which the black-haired man accepted gratefully. "Go home, since I'll be very busy and I won't. Don't worry about the talk we would have. Tomorrow we'll talk about it," he finished before leaving to where Barakiel went without waiting for a response from the resigned black-haired man. "Well, what I know," he muttered a little frustrated as he decided to listen to the adult's words. However, when he was about to fly away, he noticed the amused and defiant look that Vali sent him in his direction. Gohan narrowed his eyes slightly at this. That boy did not radiate evil, but an arrogant and confident aura. He was almost like Vegeta. However, he also emanated an aura of mystery like Azazel's. It was a strange combination and he didn't like it at all. The slightest. Clearing those thoughts, he took off at a moderate speed since he was in no hurry to get to his apartment. Sometime later Gohan walked down the hallway that led to his apartment with Raynare's thoughts in mind. Was she a wild card for him? Bring her to good or stop trying and let her stay in evil? "I can't do that, I know she can change," he thought to himself as he stopped at the entrance of his apartment before taking out the keys and opening the lock. "It's only a matter of time," he continued as he entered the apartment and closed the door. Gate in the process. However, he realized that the living room light was on, which was curious since he always turns it off before leaving the house, sleepy or not. Curious about this, he walked further inside inspecting the apartment, but without any sign of anyone. Confused even more, he decided to use his senses only to discover two small, almost undetectable key in the room. "I don't remember seeing anyone there," he mumbled confused as he walked back to the living room and looked around to no avail, until a slight breath drew his attention to the living room, more specifically the armchair. Wasting no time, he walked closer only to have his eyes widen as he saw not only Akeno asleep on the couch while her head was leaning slightly on the palm rest like a pillow, but Rias as well. She, like Akeno, was sleeping peacefully on the couch next to Akeno, only she was partially lying on the couch with half of her body lying down and the other half from her waist down, falling off the edge of the furniture. They must have waited for me for a long time, he thought, looking briefly at the window in the dark sky. "How does Rias-san know where my apartment is?" he asked, looking at the calm face of the red-haired girl. She looked so calm and beautiful, especially with that glare that the lamp on the ceiling provided and hit her sleeping face. This girl to whom she had sworn allegiance was stealing a lot of time from her thoughts. After looking at her for a while, he shifted his gaze to Akeno. She always looked beautiful, sleeping or not. It was disconcerting how this girl turned his world upside down. Of course she was a bit daring, but Gohan liked her personality a bit. And secretly, he began to see her as something more than a friend. "How I wish Raynare was here," she muttered sadly as her gaze wandered to the other empty couch, imagining the black-haired girl, sleeping in the same way as Rias and Akeno, while a smile spread across her beautiful and ignorant face. Serene, waiting for him to come to wake her up. Quickly shaking his head at such thoughts, the black-haired man decided to focus on now and walk towards the girls on the couch. "I hope I don't wake her up," he thought as he knelt down next to Rias before using his right arm and looping it under her neck while his left arm held her legs below her thighs bringing her bridal style. "She really needs a break," he said to himself as he got up and walked to his room with the girl in his arms. Gohan entered the room and walked to his bed stealing one last look from the relaxed girl before placing her on the bed very carefully so as not to wake her up from the pleasant dream she had. Proof of this was that smile that settled on her face. The black-haired man left the room and headed towards the other girl on the couch. However, he never caught the name that slipped from Rias's smiling lips. "Gohan," she mumbled sleepily and happy with the dream she was having. Gohan wasted no time walking into the living room before kneeling beside Akeno and repeating the process as he had done with Rias, carefully picking Akeno up. He couldn't help the smile that spread on his face as she pressed further into him. And smiled happily. It was like a natural reaction of hers whenever Gohan was around. "I met your father today," he murmured as he looked at her relaxed face and at the same time, walking towards his room. "Nice guy, he really cares about you," he told her knowing that she wasn't listening. "However, I felt that I had to." He remembered the time that Akeno told him about his father and that he was to blame for her mother's death. Gohan didn't know what had happened to make her think that, but the guy she met didn't look bad and seemed very protective of his daughter. He really loved her. However, Akeno seemed to have a grudge against him for it. Gohan immediately made a mental note to find out more about that and help Akeno resolve the differences she had with Barakiel. After all, a father's love was very precious and should not be wasted at any time, because one cannot. He could know when you would lose him forever, and he learned that the hard way. Clearing those sad thoughts, she entered the room making sure not to make too much noise so as not to wake up the girl in her arms and the other sleeping peacefully in her bed. The Demi-Saiyan deposited her on the bed and next to Rias, carefully lowering Akeno to her before sliding his hands under her body, bringing her school skirt with it and making her rise up a bit, revealing the fabric of her skirt. Her royal blue panties to him. This definitely made the black-haired man's face completely red. However, the cloth seemed a bit wet, which confused the blushing black-haired man, but he decided not to pay any more attention to it as a strange tingling arose from his stomach and he felt his crotch. It was bulky a bit. Definitely, something was wrong with all of this. Gohan did not hesitate to quickly leave the room with a blush on his face. He knew that he was reacting to Akeno's female body thanks to the human anatomy books he read. However, he did not want to say that it was something worrying and disturbing. He definitely wasn't Issei or his other two perverted friends, but female anatomy was getting a lot of attention lately, especially Rias, Akeno and Raynare. "I have to stop thinking about that," he muttered, puzzled but with the blush still present on his face. Shaking his head quickly to clear his mind a bit, he walked to the couch taking a pillow from the other couch before lying on it since the bed was occupied by two girls and some very beautiful ones at that. Well, what they were trying to tell me was how to wait all this time. It's going to have to wait for tomorrow, he muttered, settling back in the chair putting his hands behind his neck as he looked up at the ceiling before closing his eyes waiting for his dream will not last in coming.
Thanks for listening. If you want the next part of this video, be sure to like, subscribe and comment and hit that bell notification. See you next time.